Hello to you, and thank you for landing here on, one of my favourite topics actually, how to coach a sales call with a member of your team. So to be really clear, I'm talking about coaching a call or a sales meeting that your rep has held, and you have set aside some time for a coaching session to run through the call with your rep. The question is, how do you do that well? And so in the next 10-12 minutes, I'd like to cover three things with you. The goal of the sales coaching session, how to run a call coaching session with a member of your team, and finally, assessing your own performance as coach. So let's dive in. So when you're in a call coaching session, what is the goal by the end? Are you thinking about the areas the rep needs to improve the most? Maybe you're thinking about the rep's path to improvement. How do they get there? Or maybe it's as much about recognizing the sales rep for what they're great at as it is about what they need to strengthen. And those things are great. All those things, they matter. However, from this video onwards, I'd like you to think about one word that would summarize your goal of a call coaching session with a member of your team, which is ownership. I believe the most important thing we do when we coach is develop our sales reps' sense of ownership. Let's just spend a couple of minutes on this. When we feel a strong sense of ownership, two things happen. Firstly, we have a higher level of self-motivation. And just think how important that is in sales, that drive we need to succeed, to find the strength to pick ourselves up, to put ourselves in vulnerable situations. And the second thing that happens when we feel a strong sense of ownership is that so does our attachment to our outcomes. We feel intimately attached to the outcome, to the result. We care about where we end up. I don't think any of us would argue with the fact that we would like highly self-motivated reps attached to their outcomes. And those two things are the benefits of having a strong sense of ownership. The question is, how do we develop it? And there's research that suggests that there's two things that raise our sense of ownership. The first thing is decision-making. Are our reps responsible for the important decisions related to their performance? And the second is self-investment. Are our reps allocating time each week to training and to developing their skills? Those are two simple things, but let's just reflect on each of them for a moment. When it comes to decision making, just think how many important decisions are served up for your team. This is the target. This is the target you'll hit. This is the territory. This is the area you'll go after. This is the process. These are the steps you'll follow. And these are the tools you'll need to do your job. For all really good practical reasons, there is a ton of critical decisions made for our reps on their behalf. And when it comes to self-investment, just think how much of your week, how much of your team's week are they spending investing in themselves versus on the sales process treadmill, repeating one activity after another. Just consider how a nudge more time invested in improving their skill could positively impact their sense of ownership. And so here's an opportunity as leaders to use our call coaching sessions to really develop that sense of ownership using decision-making and self-investment to guide our framework. But before we dive into the framework, we should touch on the negative side of ownership. An increased sense of ownership can have its negative side effects because that feeling of ownership, that weight of responsibility we feel, it can lead to us doing two things. It can lead to us failing to delegate, and it can lead to territorial behavior. So how can that interfere with your coaching session with a member of your team? Well, this is not actually about the sales rep. This is actually about you as the sales leader and that strong sense of ownership that you're likely to feel. You're used to making big decisions. You're used to feeling the weight of the revenue target on your shoulder. And you are certainly heavily invested in the outcome produced. This can lead us to us making decisions for our reps, and it can easily slip us out of coach mode. So we need to watch out for the following. Watch out for sentences that sound like, I think it would be helpful if. Don't railroad the coaching session by dictating your own agenda. This is about the rep, their development, their goals. Watch out for sentences that start with, in my experience, I think. Be careful not to replace coaching questions with problem solving for the rep, because that will immediately diminish any sense of ownership. Watch out for sentences that sound like, I really think you should have. Coaching sessions are not about judgment. Watch out for sentences that include, I'd expect. You should be encouraging the rep to set their path forward to meet their expectations. That is a really important part of ownership. And finally, watch out for the biggest error, maybe the most frequent error, focusing on the deal instead of the person. Be careful not to turn this into a pipeline review. That's where deal planning and progression should sit. This is about developing the person's ability, so stay true to that. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through a really simple framework, which you can also download after if that's useful. My goal here is to make it simple so that you can just pick it up and start using it today in your coaching sessions. So there's 3 areas. There's the introduction, very simple. This is just where we're going to set some expectations. There's explore. This is the real bulk of the coaching session. This is where you're going to spend time listening to the rep's feedback on the sales call. And then there's the last section, the path, where we're really going to look forward and look at gaining commitment on the change the rep is looking to see and understand how they're going to make it happen. What I'd like to do now is just share with you a handful of questions that I find useful in coaching that will put your coaching sessions on the right path forward. So let's start right at the beginning with the introduction. There's 3 layers to each part, and the first is discovery. I open every sales coaching session with the same question. What would you like from this coaching session? That question does 3 things. Firstly, it signals to the rep, this time is dedicated to you and your development. You're setting the objective. Secondly, it signals to you as the leader, it's about your sales rep's journey. It's not about yours. And finally, it provides clarity on what the sales rep would like to achieve by the end of the session. So you really know what your job is and how you can be a great coach to your rep during that time. Then you want to start to narrow the focus, which really means just dive in a bit deeper. As a sales coach, I want to really understand what about the call was so special that it deserves our joint attention in a coaching session. If you don't know why prior to the session, then certainly start by asking what made you select this call. And there's an accountability thing for me here. People who take their development seriously and really want value from their coaching sessions will carefully think about the calls they choose. And you should give your sales rep a chance to voice that and understand it. And then once they've explained why the call was selected, simply ask the rep to share more. The example question on the screen is, so you selected this call to look at how you handled the competitor conversation. Can you tell me more about that? Can you share more about that? At this point, the rep will give you some headlines of why the call was different, why they might have found it uniquely challenging. Maybe they tried something new they were proud of, but maybe looking for some reassurance. And then, to finish off the introduction session, you're simply going to repeat the rep's goals of the session. So you've headlined your focus together, and you've really shown that you've listened and that you really care before you dive into more depth. So let's explore phase 2, which is the explore phase, funnily enough. There's 2 parts in the explore phase. There's the strengths and the areas to improve. And I love to start talking about the strengths in the call and asking the rep what they thought they did well. I've been coaching for many years, and it appears we're really well conditioned to look for the negative things. And actually, we need to work hard to train our minds to look for the strengths, because those things, they're important for the reps to recognize in themselves. It really builds confidence, and it helps us as leaders to congratulate the rep on those areas. So it's a great place to start. Once your rep has explained what they did well in the call, you can start to narrow their focus by understanding what was so great that they want to repeat it. What was so great that they want to build it into their personal playbook, or maybe even share it with their teammates to learn from as well. And then before you move on to part 2, you're going to recognize what you thought they did really well in the call, because you'll probably have picked up on some things that are different. So this is your opportunity to share them and then repeat back what the rep would like to add to their playbook. Then you move on to part 2. What would you like to strengthen? And you know there is one important goal with this question, which is to make sure that the rep identifies the area they need to work on that will be most impactful on his or her performance. You will know what that is going into the coaching session, but you're looking to see if you and your rep are both aligned here. It doesn't matter if the rep lists lots of things at this point, that's quite normal, but pay attention. Do they list what I call the game-changing area? And so one of two things is now going to happen. You're either going to have an aware rep, meaning they've discovered their game-changing area that they really need to focus on, or you're going to have an unaware rep, meaning they've not picked up on it. So in scenario one, let's imagine the rep is aware of the area they need to strengthen. You're going to get your rep to explore that area further by asking something like, what other approach could you have tried? It's a great question to start the conversation around what the rep could have done differently, and it can be used multiple times if it needs a few attempts to get to the best solution. In scenario two, the rep hasn't shown any awareness of the key area they really need to work on. My favourite question to ask is, how did the customer react when? I love asking the question in a way that gets the rep to relive the moment through the eyes of the customer to see if it helps them spot what you can already see. And if that question doesn't work so well, then you can try asking, can you share your thoughts on what happened here? To begin the conversation and focus their attention on the area of the call where they need to develop. The key thing in all this, in all situations, is that you're using questions to guide the rep's decision making and help them discover their opportunities rather than telling them. And so to finish off this section, you're going to repeat back the two things. Firstly, you're going to recognise the rep for what they did well. And finally, you're going to confirm what their key area to focus is on working on. The final section is path, which is now moving your rep's thoughts into what happens now zone and getting them to think about how do they do something constructive to learn and grow from the coaching session. And a great way to open up the discussion is by asking what ideas have they got on how they can work on their game changer. I like this question because it encourages an open mind and it encourages your rep to share whatever's going through their head, whatever they have flowing through their mind. But as you narrow the focus on this area, you're going to help the rep identify if their plan is achievable and how they can make sure it happens. So start by asking what they're going to commit to doing to improve. And then you need to make sure that there's no blockers. What could get in the way is a great tester question to make sure the rep hasn't set themselves up for failure before they've even started. I love to ask, how can I help you be accountable? Because the answer gives you permission to encourage, offer help, and inspect how things are going without it coming across like you're an interfering old boss. But here's the best bit about the path forward section. The path forward will involve your sales rep investing in their own development, and that commitment to investing in themselves will fulfill part two of the equation, self-investment, helping to increase his or her sense of ownership. So by the end of your coaching session, you've asked the questions that have taken your sales rep on a journey through their call, allowing them to make some really great decisions about what they're going to repeat, what they're going to work on, and most importantly, how they're going to do it. And so, to end your call coaching session, you're going to wrap up with the third and final section, and there's three key parts. Again, you're going to reinforce where they're shone, make them feel great about their strengths in the call. You're going to repeat back their plan on what they're going to work on, so you're both really clear, and you're going to get confirmation on how you can best support as they develop in their role and focus their energy on that game-changing area. And there you have it, 3 areas divided into 3 parts that you can use during your next coaching session to help your sales rep ownership develop, whilst giving them the freedom to make decisions about the call and putting a plan in place to improve. Actually, improvement is a really good place to end this on. How will you know if you've done a good job as the coach? Because we're forever assessing our sales reps against metrics. What metrics determine whether you've retained your coach position throughout the meeting? The first indicator is the listening v talking ratio. You should be listening way more than you're talking, aiming for that 80 to 20% split. The second indicator, are you asking questions or are you giving answers? Because you should be doing far more asking than directing in your coaching session, especially if we're going to meet the goal of developing ownership. Let's aim for a 90-10 split. And then my favorite indicator, The one that will most likely forgive other sins is if we show up fully present, if we show up showing we care with 100% of our energy and zero distractions, just quality time invested in listening to your rep and displaying your commitment to their investment, their development as your leader. 100% energy, zero distractions. So thanks very much for watching. Remember that the framework for what we've covered today is in the comments under this video. I hope it's helped. Thanks for listening. Enjoy.